just knowing that I can be there every day for my kids and knowing that like I've achieved my goal of that. I mean, obviously still going and they're still growing, but that, we've made it almost a decade and that, I get to continue on this journey with them and support them and prepare them for life, but also educate them and, educate them on how to advocate for themselves. But we do so many more adventures now and we don't take things for granted and we live life by the moment a lot of times because we were given that chance to, realize that life is scary and things can change in the blink of an eye and you have to do the things that you want to do and live life while you can.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of At Home with Emily, a podcast about creating a life you love. I'm your host, Emily Wood, and today we are joined by Ashley Carter. Ashley is a wife, a mom, an employee, all the things that we all do every day. And one thing that makes her special is she is also a cancer survivor and a very young one. And we are so grateful that you are and grateful that you are here with us today and just appreciate you coming in to talk about your second chance at life and share part of your story.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me to be here and I'm happy to be here.
So how I came across you is my mom is a breast cancer survivor and we all know people who have been affected by cancer in our families. And you hear the word and it's not as condemning as it once was because we've come so far with treatments, but still there can be types and forms of cancer that are very aggressive and very hard to treat, even in this day and age. And so for all of us who have been alongside a loved one who has gone through that or who have gone through it ourselves, it's not easy and it's hard to make it to the other side. You yourself were, 26?
Yeah.
When you got the diagnosis? How did you know that you had cancer?
So actually, it was an accidental find. My mom had a different form of cancer when she was very young. And so my physician had decided to do genetic testing, and it came back that I had a genetic mutation. And with that genetic mutation, it meant that I needed to start screenings every 6 months at an earlier age. So she wanted to go ahead and get those baseline scans at 26, and it came back, and my mammogram showed that I had 5 tumors.
And you had no idea prior to that.
No idea. They weren't in a place that I could feel them. They weren't large enough that I could feel them or anything like that. So this was absolutely just a fluke find that I'm so grateful for. Because
in that, it was early still.
Yes, it was stage 0, so it was confined to my milk ducts. So it could have been much worse had I waited until I was older.
Without that screening, just like you said, cancer can grow for years and we don't know that it's growing, right? That's one of the scary things about it. Yeah. But for you, Ashley, you were 26 years old, which just sounds crazy because you were so young in most of our minds for breast cancer. How old were your kids at that time?
They were 3 and 1.5.
Wow. And so you're coming home from, what was it, a phone call? Or did you go into the office and find this out?
At that time, we still went into the office to get results. And I honestly, I was in shock and I went business as usual. I went to work that day after I was told, and told my family as the day went on, and told my coworkers as the day went on, and waited until I could formulate a plan to really let things start setting in and start processing and really figuring out anything.
Yeah. Well, you had no idea what that was going to mean for you.
No.
Because at that point, you're working, the kids were in daycare?
Yeah.
got the kids in daycare, you got the husband at home, you had a million things. You got to choose the right sippy cup. You have to have the right snacks. I mean, you had a lot of other things on your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was fortunate enough that, my mom kept my girls. She was a stay-at-home mom, and I had that fortunate reality that, she had my youngest, at least. My oldest was with a setter and kind of trying to get a routine. But, having that support system is so huge during that time. And whether that looks like it's your family or whether that looks like it's your coworkers or your friends or a combination of all of those, that really does make a difference in all of the process.
What type of treatment did you have to undergo?
So I was fortunate because it was DCIS. I had a bilateral mastectomy, so I had both of my breasts removed, but I also had a hysterectomy, which was my choice. With my genetic mutation, I'm at higher risk for things like ovarian cancer, and I had the conversation with my surgeons that I wanted to watch my kids grow up more than anything else, and my husband and I had already decided that we weren't having any more children anyways, and so that really the factor was I wanted to watch my kids grow up and I wanted to continue to live my life for them. So,
but knowing that those surgeries were going to be hard.
Yeah.
And surgeries can come with complications and all the things that they tell you, but you don't know how hard it's going to be until you're in it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And mentally, physically, all of the things you don't realize until you're in that situation, kind of what you're going to feel or, anything else.
And what was that like for you?
It was hard. And I think back and now doing the job that I do, I, try to mentor others, but it is hard because you do grieve losing parts of your body. You grieve, even though I knew I didn't want to have any more children, the thought that, it's absolutely out of the question now is, sometimes hard to process. But, and then not being able to take care of my kids. I couldn't lift on them, and they were small, and they still were at that age where they did need,
and they didn't understand that.
Right.
And it's like, Mommy, pick me up.
Yeah.
Mommy.
Right. So not being able to take care of my kids, not being able to do the things that I would normally do at home, like cook or clean or anything like that, like it took me down. And that in itself is, mentally exhausting because you feel like you're not doing your job as a spouse or as a mom or, anything else because you can't show up for those.
You can't meet your kids' needs.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of them when they're 1 and 3.
Yes.
And you can't understand. They can't understand. Did they know that Mommy was sick?
No, they were young enough that they didn't really understand. My mom kept them for the first couple of weeks all the time, so that way I wasn't having to stress about, any of their care at that point, and or being hurt because I was trying to pick up them or put them on my lap, or they climbed on me by accident and hurt me. And so that it was amazing that she was there and could do that, and it hurt on the other end because I couldn't have them at home with me and taking care of them and things like that. So,
but to have to make those decisions in your mid-20s, that's pretty big weight on you as a young mom.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that was like, where you're young, you're healthy, you guys are happy, you're running around, you're doing all the things that, a mid-20s mom does. And then you have a doctor telling you, hey, you have this gene. And so do you want to go ahead and do all the surgeries? And have to make those decisions as a young lady, how hard that would be.
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough, I worked in healthcare at the time, and my surgeon, honestly, he didn't give me a lot of choices. We had a long conversation, but it was, really, you should be doing a bilateral. Otherwise you will be back to see me. You're 26 years old, you will get this, form of cancer again if we don't go ahead and take the proactive measures to remove both of your breasts at the same time. The hysterectomy obviously was totally my choice. That was something I advocated for and I pushed for. But again, just being proactive to be there for my kids later was what kept me going.
And was the surgery it, or did they do further treatment?
So after the first surgery, I had expanders placed to do my reconstruction process, which then resulted in another surgery later to have the exchange surgery for that part of that. And then a few years later, I had my implants replaced. And so in total, it's only been 4 surgeries. That's
a lot of surgeries, Ashley.
Yes. In total, yes, that's a lot of surgeries, but I'm fortunate enough I didn't have to do chemo. I didn't have to do radiation. And because I had the hysterectomy, I didn't have to do hormone blockers like a lot of people do because I was already in menopause naturally that way. So on one end, it was a lot, but on the other end, I'm fortunate because it could have been a lot worse than what it was.
What is the feeling like for you now? How old are your kids?
My kids are almost 14 and 11, so.
Yeah. So a decade has already passed, which is hard to believe. I'm sure looking back on that, kind of a dark time. But what is the feeling like for you now, knowing that you are here for your kids and you are seeing them grow up, and this is in your past, and really you have this second chance now because of the early detection? Yeah.
So, just knowing that I can be there every day for my kids and knowing that I've achieved my goal of that. Obviously still going and they're still growing, but that, we've made it almost a decade, and that, I get to continue on this journey with them and support them and prepare them for life, but also educate them and, educate them on how to advocate for themselves. But we do so many more adventures now, and we don't take things for granted, and we live life by the moment a lot of times because we were given that chance to, realize that life is scary and things can change in the blink of an eye, and you have to do the things that you want to do and live life while you can, because you never know when you're not going to be able to.
And you now work with cancer patients, right?
Yeah, I work for Breast Cancer Foundation, and so I now get to give back to the community that, I live in and that I'm a part of, and I, get to help advocate for these people as well.
And do you enjoy that?
I love it. I love what I do day in and day out, and I, getting to guide people along their journey, but getting to help them in their time of need. It's, fulfilling. Not a lot of people can say that.
And I think what's hard too is we do see people in all stages of life who sometimes get the second chance, but sometimes we see those who don't. And it's so hard for us to understand and make sense out of it. And in your line of work, I know you see that all the time.
We do. We see both sides of it, and we just have to take those times of good and let them carry us through the times that are hard. So we have the unfortunate reality of we see people that come in and they aren't as fortunate as others. But, as we talked about in the beginning too, just even a stage 4 diagnosis isn't a death sentence anymore like it used to be. And so reminding those patients that do come in, you still have a chance. Just have those conversations and make sure, it's not guaranteed. And, being there for them, even though it might be the end for them, just providing all of the resources for them and just making sure sometimes that you're just that listening ear, because sometimes that's all they need is someone to listen to that might understand the experience that they're going through.
I think what's hard too in the treatment space and in the hospital setting and in this journey is you just can't predict what's going to happen. You can't predict how somebody is going to respond to the treatment or what complications might happen. And there has to be a lot of grace there. I feel like you just have to, it's the opposite of our nature, right? Like you have to resign to the process. Fight through it, but know that you can't control every step and outcome. Don't you think that's really hard for patients?
That is one of the hardest parts of cancer, is relinquishing control. And I'm so glad that you said the word grace, because anytime I'm talking to people, especially that are struggling, I remind them, you have to give yourself grace. You're not in the mindset that you were. You're not in the physical capacity that you were before these surgeries, before this diagnosis. And you have to remind yourself every day to give yourself grace.
And same for the caregivers, right?
Yes, absolutely, because it affects every person in your life just as much as it does you, and sometimes even more so, because they're seeing you struggle in a way that they're not used to seeing you struggle. You might be that strong, independent person, and now you need someone that will take care of you fully because you can't brush your own hair or, stand up in a shower by yourself. You might need a little bit more help than what you're used to asking for or what anyone is used to giving you.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard on the whole family.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So what is next for you? I feel like you're one of those people that always has a smile on your face, and you've done so many hard things so early on, in your life. What's next for you?
Honestly, like I said, I just live life by the moment and by the day. And, I just figure out those grand adventures. This last year for Christmas, we drove to Texas to see Christmas lights just on a whim.
Yeah.
And, we went to Florida for Christmas one year on a whim. It's just finding those little things and just finding the adventures. And then advocating for those in the world that don't know how to advocate or can't advocate for themselves, and continuing to try to make changes in the world that support this cancer and support other cancers and those in the community.
Changes your perspective, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you coming in today, and I think that for all those who are listening, I think that it's going to be an encouragement for them as well.
Well, I hope so, and I appreciate you having me in, and I hope even if it's just one person that hears this or reminds them to get their mammogram or whatever, I hope it helps.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us for this episode of At Home with Emily, a podcast about creating a life you love. If you are watching us on YouTube, please be sure to like and subscribe so you can know when our next episode drops. We've got a new one coming out every Wednesday. Next week, we wrap up our Second Chances series. You don't want to miss that last episode. If you are on Facebook, Instagram, X, any of them, please be sure to follow Around the Ozarks so you can keep up with all our podcasts, and head to aroundtheozarks.com to sign up for our daily newsletter. We'll see you next time.